When I heard you share this, I was a little bit taken aback thinking, how could somebody say this to a child?
It took me years of healing to get over that. I think it was the most profound experiences of my life because meeting Marc Jacobs so early on in my path in life, doing what I love, I realized the importance of humility. What we think of as, oh, it's taking so long, that time is needed to build what's needed to sustain the weight of your dreams and goals. I went to my mom and I was like, do you think this is unrealistic? And she was like, Rhea, no. I'm here in this place today because I believed someone like that. I didn't get a chance to live my dreams. I'm not going to let you do that.
All right, balancers, I'm really excited to bring on today's guest to introduce and welcome in season 4. She's our first guest for season 4. And I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation today. We're going to be talking about some things that I've personally experienced. I know she's personally experienced, and I know we're not alone in our pursuit of trying to work this all out. And the topics we're going to be talking about are self-love. We're going to be talking about our inner child. So the journey of things we learned or heard from a young age and how that maybe imprinted or impacted us growing up, how we've both kind of undergone or unpacked that, how it's impacted her career. She's had quite an interesting career and journey to all the things she's doing now as an entrepreneur. So I'm really excited to have her on the show today. She, as I mentioned, is an entrepreneur, also a model, digital creator, and she's recently done a TED Talk, which was incredible and really, really captivated me and made me see how genuine she was, and has made me really excited to have her on the show today. Her vision is to inspire and empower community to make self-care a genderless and ageless household practice while bringing a simplified, realistic and accessible approach towards wellness for all, which is very aligned with what we do on the show today. I think anything that's too difficult or not practical is not something we stick to. And this topic of self-love and self-care is a big one. And so really making it practical and talking about it on a daily basis, I think, is a very important conversation. So without delaying any more time, I want to welcome Rhea Jacobs to the Balance Theory. Rhea, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to do this.
No, me too. I think we're going to have a really nice chat today. And
I think so too. I'm just going to get comfortable and
get comfy, girl. We're here to have a chat.
We are.
I really want to start with something you shared from your early childhood that had a big impact on your inner child. And when I heard you share this, I was a little bit taken aback thinking, how could somebody say this to a child? And I really would love to hear from your perspective the impact that had on you. So you shared that as a child, an adult gave you this advice: don't be naive, be realistic.
Yeah.
What was that in response to, and how did that make you feel at the time?
To give you a context, so basically we were in a circle. It was all kids and there were adults around us. And we all were sharing our dreams. And some people wanted to be an engineer. Some people wanted to be a doctor. And I was like, I want to do this and this. Basically, by God's grace, what I'm doing today. Wow. So I remember sharing that with full conviction, and I was like, that's what I wanted to do. And an adult, come to think of it now from this perspective, I feel maybe they didn't mean to be rude or try to break me down, but maybe that was all they knew. But they were like, Rhea, you can't be so naive. You have to be realistic. And that didn't sit well with me because I believe dreams are meant to be unrealistic. They're meant to be so unrealistic that when you share them with your friends, with whoever you want to share them, it scares you a little. They're not made based on where you are in life right now, how much you're making, the shade of your skin color, like where you're from. It's made by your hunger, your determination, and to base someone's dream based on the position that you are at right now, it really does affect your mental health. I mean, for me, especially after that interaction, I went home and my mom was there and she was overhearing this conversation. And I was like, Mom, do you think this is unrealistic? Like for me to do this? I mean, when they said that, it really makes you think because you're a child. You absorb everything like a sponge.
And that doubt kind of creeps in.
Yeah, because see, when you're an adult, you know who you are, you know what you like, what you don't like, what your ability is. But as a child, you seek truth everywhere you go. So when someone tells you something, you believe them.
Mm.
And I went to my mom and I was like, do you think this is unrealistic? And she was like, Rhea, no. I'm here in this place today because I believed someone like that. I didn't get a chance to live my dreams. I'm not going to let you do that.
Wow.
And thank God I had that kind of energy around me, because if I didn't, I would have been part of the rat race. Now, I'm not saying a 9 to 5 job is not the right way to go. It was not meant for me. Something that doesn't bring you joy, regardless of what it is. For example, like when people say, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. It's not that when you do what you love, everything's amazing, the days are easy, your job is easy. No, because when days get hard, your love for what you do will help you get through that day. So you need to be really careful what you say around kids, because they absorb it. Like, I'm at the age that I am now, and I still remember every word, and I still feel a lot of the things that I felt back then. It took me years of healing to get over that.
Yeah, I definitely can resonate. I know a lot of people listening will have those memories, those deep-seated moments from childhood where things were said to us that have stuck with us, whether you remember them explicitly or not. I mean, I'll give you a really simple example, and I think you're bang on when you say that these adults probably didn't mean it at the time, and they probably actually had your best interests insofar as their intentions at heart. My mum, for example, I was quite academic all through school, and I'd come home and show her my test results and there'd be like a 95 out of 100.
Wow.
And she'd say, you know, great job. What happened to the other 5? You know, as in trying to get me to consider, like, where's the room for improvement? But that constant focus on what was lacking really developed this internal belief and feeling that I wasn't good enough. And that wasn't an isolated event. It kind of happened multiple times. It wasn't just her, but that such a simple, innocent comment to a child turned my attention to what was lacking constantly. And that's something I've had to unpack as an adult. So for you, I know you talk a lot about like healing your inner child. I know you've now actually developed something to help people do that. But I want to talk about your journey. Was it this comment or this kind of avenue of beliefs that were pushed onto you that's something you've had to unpack, or was it something else that formed part of your inner child healing?
I think it was a combination of different things. When you're someone who has different dreams, different ambitions, you look different, you're completely against the grain. Quite often, the people around you, of course, now we're more acceptant. But when we were growing up as kids, there was no such thing as inclusivity or diversity or mental health or being kind to someone. This is something that's trending now. Back then, you just said what you felt. If you felt someone didn't look nice, you'd say it in their face. If someone's dreams were unrealistic, you'd say it on their face. And I mean, I think it just stemmed out of different situations that made me question my worth as a child and my ability. And it was not just this one incident, it was a lot of incidents. I mean, in school, I was severely bullied, to a point where I used to go to bed and be like, oh my God, I need to wake up a new person, because I used to hate the way I looked. I know. I mean, and that's just not my story. That's everyone's. See, that's the thing about trauma. We're so used to trying to compare ourselves to other people that we think, oh, that person has it worse than me. I have no right to complain. But I believe whatever your trauma is, it's valid. If it hurts you, it pains you, it changes the way you think, it's valid.
It's relative to your experience.
100%. So I think in order to heal, you need to identify these things, regardless of what they are, big or small. It brings you pain, it's valid.
Yeah. So for you, when you're now as an adult, looking back, doing that work, what does that actually involve? You know, we hear a lot, I'm sure people listening have heard a lot the phrase like heal your inner child, and thinking about moments like this kind of gives us an idea of where to look to start. But what does that actually practically look like? Of course, I want to push to one side that often it's a great idea to work with a therapist, someone qualified, a psychologist, to work through some of these things that maybe are too big for us to feel on our own. But in terms of actual practical things we can do to start that healing process, what did that look like for you? I guess it's a very individualized experience as well.
I think for me, it was 3 steps. The first thing was to identify there was a problem. I think with life, as a defense mechanism, we get so used to storing away emotions and certain experiences that we've had, because let's face it, life is busy. You can't revisit every single thing that happened to you every day. It would literally
consume you.
Yeah, 100%. So I think number one, identifying, and like if it's a box, bring the box in front of you and be like, okay, this brings me pain. This hurts me till date. Like it happened years ago. And if it still hurts me, I need to work on it.
No matter how big or small it is.
No matter how big or small it is, 100%. And I think that's step one. Step two is realizing it's a daily process. It's not like, oh, I do a journal entry or I do one meditation and I'm done. If you invest daily into your actual health as a body, you need to invest equal amounts into your emotional health. It's like the yo-yo diets. Oh, drink soups for 10 days and you will lose weight. Yes, you will lose weight, but then you can't drink soups your entire life. So then when you go back to eating the way you used to, you go back to step one plus more.
Yeah.
Emotional health is like this. You need to work on yourself daily. And more than anything, once you reach that point of healing, life will throw a lot of things at you. So you need to maintain that. So if you just leave it and then go back to speaking to yourself the way you did before, or go back to thinking about yourself the way you did before, it's really hard to cope. And the third thing that I find most helpful is to write. That's why I created our Ray of Light journal. One of my favorite prompts in our journal is, what does your inner child need to hear to heal itself better? It's a simple question.
Beautiful.
I'm not going to say how to answer, because the minute I shared this, you already know the answer in your mind. And just writing that releases such a huge part of you that you've probably locked away because of life. And if you're someone who doesn't like to write, I heard this in a podcast once before, and it was so beautiful. They say you need to imagine yourself, sit down in a place, close your eyes, imagine yourself, who you are now as an adult. And imagine you going to your bedroom as a child. And baby you, like the child you, is on the bed. You go up to that child, you put your arm around that child, and you tell that child everything that child needed to hear. Maybe give that child a hug. Maybe talk to the child and give them the advice that you've learned because of life. Like, you were not an adult your entire life. You had to go through certain experiences to have the knowledge, the wisdom that you have today. So tell that child the things that you need to tell. I mean, simple exercises like this really help you release a huge part of you that you were holding on to, that was holding you down in life.
100%. And I can say I've done something very, very similar. I'll share. It's kind of like another visualization, but one I found quite useful. I learned it in therapy. So basically you close your eyes. I'm Erika. I'm 28 years old and I'm going into an elevator. And that elevator has the ages the levels, shall we say, 1 to 50, let's just say for now. Now, depending on how I'm feeling that day, I can go to a level higher. So visit myself in the future to maybe gain wisdom or words of encouragement from my future self. Or I can go to my younger self to tell my younger self something I need to hear. So you take yourself through the visualization, you go through the lift, and it's more like if I'm going through something challenging, right? Like I try and close my eyes and do this visualization. I go in the lift and I try and intuitively choose a number. I don't think about it too much. I don't go in there with an intention. I just choose a number. And depending on where I land, you get out of the lift and you are either looking at yourself in the future, so the things you are dreaming and aspiring for, you see yourself there, and take words of comfort from what you need to hear from your future self, or you're going backwards. And again, you could use kind of what you said, to your bedroom at that age, or somewhere you used to hang out, or a moment in time. and you tell that younger self what you need to hear. And either way, it's quite a healing experience to draw from your past or future self. But that's like a really, if for those listening that are quite visual and like doing visualization, something like that, it's like I just found it so powerful.
True.
And it sounded so simple, and I'd never done anything like it before, but I was blown away at how powerful it really was. So I love that you've shared that. You've just reminded me to actually share that. I've not said that before on the podcast, but it's something that's really, really helped me. So I think that's a really beautiful part. And I think this is actually a really good segue into the conversation of self-love and self-care. Now, I love these topics, but they're big topics and they're big buzzwords.
And not everyone is ready for it.
Yeah, and I think it can cast a little bit of an eye roll reaction when people talk about it, because I think it's easy for it to get wrapped up in have a bubble bath and do an eye mask and put your feet up, right? Like for me, it goes a lot deeper than that. I know it's the same for you. So, and everyone listening to this podcast is here because they are busy people, but they prioritize their health and they want to find a unique kind of balance in their own life. And so making these concepts practical on a daily basis is really important to keeping them front of mind. So I'd love to hear, firstly, maybe we can start with, what does self-love actually mean to you?
Self-love to me always points out to this one statement that I stand by. You can't pour from an empty cup. And a lot of times people have judgments when it comes to self-love because they think, oh, I can't invest time in myself. I have work, I have kids, I have this, I have that. They're 100% right. Life is busy. You don't have time for yourself. But in order for you to do your best in all those roles, you need to be whole yourself. You need 100%. To pour in the love towards yourself as a person. You need to invest time in yourself, because only then can you do your best in these roles. No one's saying leave your kids in the room and go and have a bubble bath and, forget the world. No. Realistic ways that you can actually incorporate in your daily life to ensure that you're spending time on yourself, and also giving yourself a little love. Simple things like enjoying your morning coffee. You and I both now have our coffee in a cup because that's life now. We are in a rush. We don't have time. We don't even enjoy our coffee. Nowadays, we don't even have the attention span to watch a whole movie. We have to check our phones, or we have to do something. A simple thing like waking up in the morning and saying, I'm going to enjoy my tea or coffee with intention. Use that moment to maybe set an affirmation. Use that moment to maybe journal. And simple things like this that you can incorporate without disrupting your life is more realistic than, oh, I'm going to go to the Himalayas and try to find myself. I would love to do that, by the way.
Like a 10-day retreat.
Oh my God.
Amazing.
Yes, amazing. But not everyone has a privilege. I mean, I don't have the privilege to do it now. I mean, I have so much happening. So realistic ways where I'm still closer to that goal. And it becomes a lifestyle choice rather than, oh, I'm going to let go of all my tasks of the day and do this.
I want to pull out two things from what you've said, because I 100% agree. And I think what you're saying is really, really important. The first is, you're right. Self-love is seen, or self-care is seen as this very selfish thing. But for people who, and I always say this, for people who want to do things for other people, we were talking before we jumped on this podcast how, giving back to our families is a big why for the two of us. And so for anyone that's got a generous heart, that loves to do things, that loves to serve others, I can see why they fall into this trap where they feel that doing things for themselves is selfish. However, once you realize, and this was a big turning point for me, once I realized that if I'm giving from a full place, the quality of what I'm giving is greater, that changed everything. It no longer became a selfish thing. It was, I'm doing stuff for me so I have more to give to others. And that's not to say your why should be look after yourself for everyone else. It's just a simple reframe so that you don't feel guilty doing it. Because if you feel guilty doing it, defeats the purpose of doing it in the first place. So that's the first thing I wanted to add on to what you said. And the second thing, and I think just based off what you've shared, really, like every self-love habit or tool or thing you do is really just about being present. Bring that intention and be present. And what I love about that is you just need a moment. it could be 5 seconds of breathing or listening to yourself or taking a pause. People who have kids, people who have businesses, people who are running around working a 9 to 5, plus trying to keep their health on track, plus trying to have relationships. Like it's a lot.
It's hard.
And so we don't need to carve out hours and shift our routine so much to make this happen. That's, I think, an excuse you don't need to access self-love. It's really just those moments. And I just wanted to share, I guess, one way I've looked at self-love, which is also quite similar. For me, it really just comes down to, can I fully accept myself? And what that looks like on a daily basis is when I've made a mistake, when I'm not proud of something, when I am experiencing fear or shame or any of those big uncomfortable feelings, can I sit with it? Can I accept myself? Can I forgive myself? Those kinds of big questions, momentary pauses of reflection, to me reflect self-love. And that's like the internal things. And don't get me wrong, I love a good massage. I love a facial.
We do, yeah.
Those things are beautiful. But I think those things on their own, without the internal stuff,
100%.
is surface level. So
100%.
I think there's a place for those kinds of bigger things that we can do for ourselves. They're great. But on their own, I think are empty vessels of self-love.
100%. Like everything, we have a word in my language, Hindi. It's called niyat. Niyat. And in Arabic, it's niya. It means intention.
Beautiful.
Anything that you do in life has to have intention, because then you're just empty. Then you're just living each day. Do you want to live each day, or do you want to enjoy and experience life? It's very different things. So yes, get that massage, but also have that moment to understand why you need it. It's, intention.
And to piggyback on that, like really, if you can't forgive yourself when you've made a mistake,
Correct.
when you're just a human, then that massage is not going to do much on its own.
100%.
Or you're actually not going to enjoy it as much on its own if you're grappling with these internal struggles, which are the bigger picture, right? But I really wanted to bring this conversation to the podcast. I've done one episode on it just as a solo before to dive into it a little bit. But I think it's important to remind people, because I think the way this word is thrown around can get really caught up in, well, I don't have time to book this, or I don't have a means to go out for 2 hours on the weekend and book myself into a day spa. Like those things, I always say they're like value add-ons. But if you get the core stuff right, bringing the intention, having those moments, whatever that looks like, and make it realistic to your routine, right? That's the best way to do it. For you, so you mentioned, like, I know you talk about like making your matcha. It's quite a process. That's like an experience for you. What other things in your day are like those intentional moments or just self-love little bouts?
I mean, realistically, no day is the same for me. Schedule-wise, there's always something different happening. So if I can have one sort of same thing that happens every day that I know is a sense of a grounding, it helps me cope. So things like matcha, I mean, for anyone listening, it'd be like, it's just a cup of matcha, Rhea. It's not that deep. But to have that moment to myself, whisking the matcha, making it, going into the garden, being with my dog, breathing in nature.
Oh, I mean, say no more. I feel relaxed just listening.
100%. And then my dad, like, he loves to feed the birds in our garden. So we have a lot of parrots that come in.
Beautiful.
And my mom's gardening. Just to have that moment to just ground and express gratitude helps me cope with the intensity that each day brings. And also ending the day on the same note, journaling. That's usually the time that I journal, when I have my matcha and in the night. It helps. So these two things I know I can do every single day.
Yeah.
So in case the day is busy, I know for a fact that I still have that. So realistically, these are things that I can do despite. Even if I'm traveling, I can buy a matcha and write a journal.
Yeah, and everything else is an add-on.
Exactly. So if you can hold on to, at least for me, if I can hold on to that one same thing that happens every day, I'm like, okay, I'll be fine.
Yeah, and that just brings like a level of awareness as to what's practical for you.
Correct.
So for anyone listening who's thinking about this, like, try and make it something that is realistic in your routine. And it could even be when your head hits the pillow every night, you think about one thing you're grateful for that day. But like not something not something that's just like quick to think of, like, oh, I'm grateful I could breathe today. Or, really think about something that's happened that's specific to that day. I just find trying to be present, pinching myself in different moments and really just reminding 100%. Myself, like, hey, you're in this moment. feel it, like take it all in. Like when I'm in these podcasts, it's a perfect example. Like I have to be super present. So I try and bring that level of intention to moments throughout my day. And that just it's actually helped my memory in a weird way too. So I'm not just like autonomously going through life. Like I can remember how I felt in different moments because I've brought intention. But yeah, I think this is just it's an easy, simple way to do it that we don't often speak about. So I love that we're having this chat. I know you talk about, or you have thoughts on, toxic positivity. Yeah. Again, another kind of buzzword that's been thrown around. Talk to us a little bit about what that actually means.
So there's a fine line between having a mindset of being like a toxic way into positivity and optimism. A very thin line. I'll give you an example. Imagine yourself in a ditch. You're in a ditch. If you're in a mindset where you think, okay, I'm in the ditch, okay, but the sun is shining, it's beautiful, I'll just stay here because life is great. That is very toxic. Optimism is, okay, I'm in a ditch. I do not want to be here. How do I get out of this? Oh, there's a slope there. I'll get out of it. Both on the tangent of being a positive person, but one going towards the hint of delusion and one towards the hint of growth. It's very important to be grateful, be mindful, be very happy with where you are at, but you need to feel to heal. One of my favorite quotes in our journal, in our Ray of Light journal, is, I need to process my emotions and feel how I'm feeling in order to healthily heal. I need to feel to heal. If you brush everything under the carpet, under the guise of being a positive person, you're not dealing with things. You're not coming face to face with things. You're not working towards your growth. I mean, if you're stagnant, that's it. Like you rot, right? Anything stagnant rots. And I think just this mindset really does help you stem away from being a person who's trying to be positive but inside the toxic spectrum, rather than a person who's trying to be optimistic and look at life with more realistic, fresh eyes.
I think the key difference between the two is like the intention you bring to both, right?
Everything
like one is it really is. Everything really is intention. It's kind of like in one avenue, you're being positive for the sake of it.
Correct.
You know, and that's where I find, like, I mean, I've definitely had moments like that in the past where I'm like, oh, I should just be positive right now because that's the right thing to do. But that's where I find like practicing gratitude is really hard. Being positive feels really forced. And that's when it's toxic because it doesn't help you. It's ironic because it doesn't actually help you accept your situation. It's maybe steering away from feeling the feels, right, of what's actually going on. But the other avenue is like more growth centered, where you're like, okay, I'm here. Shit, but
I need to get out.
How do I
get out?
Yeah, re-steer this. You know, it's interesting, and it ties in well, I guess, with the conversation of intention and self-love. Because if you're doing things because you feel like they're the right thing to do, or you feel like they're making you look positive, is that harming you more than helping you? You know, 100%. Just like reflecting on the layer of toxic positivity on top of your self-love habits and the intention and the why with them. I just think it's an interesting combination for people to think about.
Especially nowadays when this whole mindset of you have to be extremely positive. Yes, it is very hard being a positive, like being a person who has a bright outlook towards life. It's very easy to be negative, 100%. Oh, life is not working. No. It's very easy. But to actually have the intention, to do it with intention and say, you know what, I'm here in this moment right now, but I'm sure I can get out of this. How do I get out of it? That's very different.
100%. I'd love to ask you a little bit now about your career.
Yeah.
I know you were selected as one of the 10 finalists and then eventually chosen from hundreds of thousands of applicants. Now, we know the context, the pretext of that, you know, maybe people telling you it was an unrealistic dream of yours.
Yeah.
Maybe you had faced some cultural diversity restrictions, or at least societal expectations, but then you actually achieved your dream. And like you said, you're doing now what that little girl had dreamed about. Can you just share that moment that you found out you were selected and what that felt like?
This was for Marc Jacobs.
Yes.
And I remember they posted it in the night, and they're based in New York. And I had no idea this would even happen. I had zero experience in the industry. I was fresh out of uni. And I remember I was still in bed and like, you know, how, I mean, I don't do this anymore, but I used to see my phone the first thing when I wake up. And my eyes were like half open, half closed. And I saw it and I was like, oh my God, mom. Like I screamed for my mom and my dad. And it felt like a dream. And it's so see, I had all these dreams and ambitions, but I think my mom and dad believed it for me. It's very different. Like, even when I was on the flight, I was like, okay, I'll just enjoy the experience. Let's just see. Because I never really thought I'd get it. But I think it was the most profound experiences of my life because meeting Marc Jacobs so early on in my path in life, doing what I love, I realized the importance of humility. Let me give you context. So, as part of the audition, Mark wanted us to meet him first and then go ahead and do our auditions for, you know, he treated everyone in that room with the same kind of importance. And I couldn't understand because usually when some people achieve great things like he has, there is an aura around you where you feel like you're better than.
Like untouchable.
Untouchable. And he really is in that path. I mean, he's the king of fashion. And he treated everyone. There was a guy who was bringing him his ashtray. There was his marketing head. There was us. There was his assistants. He treated everyone in that room the same. And I think that is the true mark of a person who's achieved and knows what to do with it. And I'm so glad I had that. I mean, I completely went in another path in this conversation, but then having that kind of, like, to see a person like that embracing themselves as an individual, but also knowing that that was not his entirety was magical. And I'm so glad I got that initially.
That would have made like the whole experience of, you know, not even getting selected, but just moving into that industry
100%.
would have just made it
And
even more.
ever since then, I knew that whatever you achieve in life doesn't equate how you treat people. At the end of the day, how you treat people, that is your achievement, despite who you are.
Yeah. And really, like, it would have been a good moment of pause to be like, you know, your achievements are your achievements, but it doesn't change human to human.
Mm-mm.
I mean, a lot of people don't abide by that, but it would have been nice to experience that at such a young age.
Yeah.
You shared with me a couple of days ago that in the first half of your career, you didn't feel present.
No.
So was that after this audition or before?
100%.
After.
It was after, because that was my first step into my career. I was chosen as a beauty ambassador and I came back to Dubai here and I started working with all these amazing brands like Vogue. And I remember I was there and I was like, okay, now I'm here. Now I need to be on Vogue. And I was like, okay. So then I went on Vogue. Vogue would come out. And now I need to be on the cover of a magazine. That will happen. Now I need to do this. And as that happened, each achievement that I got, I would dissect. Meaning I would see like a campaign, like a whole editorial on Vogue, and I'd be like, oh my God, I didn't pose well. Oh my God, the makeup is not good. Oh my God. And my mom was like, Rhea, do you realize how hard you're being on yourself? Just flash back to 8 years in your life before. There would be no chance that you would even imagine this was possible. Yes, you wanted it, but you never believed. I think for me, it was very important. And this realization, because when my mom said it, I was like, it's just mom being mom. Like, you know,
She's always going to have my back.
Mom's always going to have my back. And also, I'm not going to always listen to mom, right? Because we think we know better when the truth is we don't. But 2020, during the period of COVID, was when I truly realized it, that when I remember my job and my career, I only remember the achievements, and not even in a way that I was proud of myself or was grateful, but, oh, this is done. It was like a checklist. And I was like, that is so dangerous. It's such a slippery slope, because I wasn't caring about my mental health. I wasn't caring about being nicer to myself. Like, you don't realize, yes, there's ambition, but there's also being kind to yourself. And that balance is very tricky. And I think post 2020 was when I actually started adding intention into my life. And ironically enough, that's how Ray was born. Because I truly felt like I missed that in my life. You know?
I think a lot of people who are ambitious, I put both of us in that category, but I'm talking like myself maybe 5-10 years ago. I had this approach, or I guess thought that, you know, taking this time to be intentional and enjoying the moments, it was a very slow energy compared to like go, 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 tick your
hustle.
goals, go, hustle. Exactly. And so for me, I was like, that's not the energy I'm going for. I need to like push on and achieve my goals. But one of my big missions or whys of doing this podcast is to really try and inspire people who are ambitious that they can tap into this and it doesn't detract from where they're going or the pace at which they're moving.
You grow better.
You grow better because you're more intentional and you're actually more fulfilled as a person, which means what you've got to give comes back to that full cup is a fuller place. And so I had such a similar experience too. You know, I was just moving on, like every goal or thing I would achieve was like a goalpost.
Exactly.
You know,
like
you
a
just
checklist.
check next. But now I look at it as more like, imagine you're running a marathon and that marathon is life. Every goal is like a pit stop, right? You stop for a bit of water. And it doesn't always, all those pit stops are not necessarily achievements. Sometimes it's moments of rest too, because to actually keep going, you need to refuel. So if you look at life as a marathon rather than just these quick sprints all the time, you look at what you're doing right now as a puzzle piece in the bigger scheme of things.
Correct.
But I was there. I know that feeling and that energy. And what really shifted it for me was just realizing that the two can coexist and tapping into intention and being a little more present, even though that feels slower. It doesn't actually take away from where I'm going. And we're talking about moments here. We're talking about moments of just being appreciative of what you've achieved, of reflecting and saying, you know, 5 years ago, I couldn't imagine myself sitting in this chair doing this right now.
Exactly.
You know, and I know for everyone listening, because they're listening and tuning into a self-development podcast, they are leaps and bounds from where they were 5 years ago. And they couldn't, 5 years ago, they couldn't have imagined where they are today. But we don't see it that way. We would look at our friend and be so proud of them and think they're so amazing and be in awe of what they've achieved. It's very difficult to do that on ourselves. Again, this is a massive pillar of self-love and it's not always branded shiny self-care, self-love. But one very simple thing I do now is say I've got a goal of X amount of subscribers on YouTube. Rather than waiting until I get to that, every little milestone that I get closer, we celebrate the small things along the way.
Yeah.
It's not even like small achievements. It's just the steps. You know, to build a staircase, you need to build every single step. So rather than waiting for the whole thing, celebrate the milestones and it helps you be a little more present. That's one thing I've been trying to do. My fiance is good at reminding me, like, you've achieved this, now let's go out for dinner or let's do this. What about for yourself? Like, how have you now shifted? So if that was kind of the first half of your career, you've now had this turning point. You've created the journal, the brand. That's helped you obviously bring a lot more intention. I can see and feel you're a very intentional person. So now how do you look at your ambitions and your goals?
Let me tell you how I found works best when it comes to goal setting. I think of it like when you go to train weights, you say, I want to lift 150. I want to lift 250. You don't go in day one into the gym with no experience and go and lift 250. Why? Because your body physically cannot take that weight. The weight of your big goals are very like this, exactly like this. You need really strong shoulders that often develop with experiences at getting things right, at getting things wrong, and taking things one step along the way. Like you start with your 5s, you move to your 10s, and then eventually your 150 and 250 goals. And with me, with life, I have my big goal in my mind, and it'll always be there. But whatever is happening in my life is just one step towards that goal. And I'm making it more intentional to A, enjoy the process, learn how much I can, not be afraid to make mistakes, because mistakes is how you learn. You never learn from your wins. You learn from your mistakes.
True.
And just be mindful about that and learn and not be ashamed of taking it slow, one step at a time. What we think of as, oh, it's taking so long, That time is needed to develop your wisdom, your knowledge, to learn and to build what's needed to sustain the weight of your dreams and goals. So I think I approach it that way, and it's more healthier that way because I'm nicer to myself, but also I'm learning more. So eventually when I do achieve that big goal, I have this huge database of things I got wrong, and I'll be like, okay, you know what? I can handle this because I had to handle all of that. And I think that's just my approach to goal setting and approaching things in life in that, like with that mindset.
I actually took note of a brilliant quote you said in your TED talk because it's what you're saying now, but in the quote that you said on the talk, you said the challenges that you go through prepare you for the weight of your dreams.
100%.
That is such a beautiful statement, and 100%. It's so true, and it helps you make your peace with the struggles, the waiting game, the unexpected things that happen. All of those are preparing you for the weight of what you're dreaming about, what you're going for. I think that's beautiful. I want to ask you something that is something I personally struggle with still to this day, irrespective of how much intention I bring. I'm a lot more mindful in how I approach things, but one thing I still struggle with is impatience. I can get really impatient when things don't happen the way I want. They're taking longer. It happens in an unexpected way. And it's more when I'm going through these moments of kind of not much happening, right? And it's when I reflect on it, when I'm not in that energy of feeling impatient, it feels a little bit silly when you reflect on it, because it's like life's not always this up or this downs. You kind of have this transition period in between two. That's life. Do you experience that impatience? And if so, what tips do you kind of have for people going through that?
I 100% experience it all the time. And it's not silly because it just means you want it that bad. And that is needed because that's what's going to drive you towards your goals. And yes, impatience, especially with social media, and you tend to compare yourself to people. You'd be like, oh, she got it at 16. I am such and such age and I'm still here. But once you realize that everyone has their own path, it makes life a lot easier. Meaning she had her time. This is my time. Maybe I needed to learn the things that I needed to learn in order to get here. So although it's taking time, it's fine. Coming to peace with that really helped me because I'm a very impatient person. Like even now in this talk, I'm like, that's just
fidgeting.
I am. That's just who I am. Like I always have to be doing something. And my mom is a very calm, zen person. And she brings that balance into my life. And she says this, everything has its time. When things don't work out as well, it's for a reason. You may not see it now, but you will see it eventually. So if you're impatient, it's great. That means you really want this. So use that to drive how you're working towards that goal, rather than be like, oh, you know what, it still hasn't happened, I'll just leave it. No. Hone in on that energy and use it in a different tangent.
Absolutely. This is just reminding me, I'm pretty sure it's a quote from a song, but it goes something like, who's to say time's moving too fast or too slow when you don't know how long you've got?
Exactly.
And so really it's hindsight is a beautiful thing. But I wanted to ask you that because I feel like when I go through those moments and I get stuck in that impatience, it's probably the strongest internal struggle I have.
Yeah.
And just for anybody listening who's in it right now, I love what you've said. I've never heard that before, that like impatience is just a sign that you want it bad.
Yeah.
So you can reframe it in that way and just know it will pass. Like all emotions are temporary. Rhea, if people want to connect with you, check out your journal, continue to follow along your journey and learn from you, where's the best place they can go? And I'm going to put some links in the show notes.
You can go on to our website, ray.ae. That's where you get the journal. You can follow us on Instagram, ray.ae again. And for me, it's the R Jacobs on Instagram and rheajacobs.com.
Perfect. Well, I'll link all of those in the show notes below. I want to thank you so much for your energy, intention,
thank you,
and time today. I appreciate having a chat with you, and it was really nice connecting.
No, this was so amazing. I mean, the way you did this entire interview, it makes me feel like a therapy session. I loved it.
I'm not qualified. Please don't quote me.
No, I won't. But it's beautiful. And I want to thank you for doing this, for inspiring so many people. Like, you don't realize who needed to hear what we spoke of today. So I think you need to give yourself a little tap on your shoulder.
Thanks, girl. Appreciate it.